Of course, it all starts with adding a main light or key light. As we remember, the key light is supposed to be the brightest, most prominent light source, which function is to sculpt the shape and dimension of our subject, and in some cases to draw the viewer's eye to something really important. And by the way, I'm gonna be creating a new collection for each new layer of lighting. So this one is light_key, and it will be heavily motivated by the environment we have here. Namely these big and soft windows with the overcast daylight streaming in. Of course, technically it could have been motivated by some other light source which exists in the scene, for example by this gate, but I'll leave this gate for the rim light instead. And our key light will come in from the windows for sure to hit the short side of the face on the left. So I'm gonna press Shift A and add in an area light. It's always good to use shortcuts for moving stuff around in the Blender viewport. So G to move, S to scale, and R to rotate it. A classic trio of the must-have Blender shortcuts, used so often. Getting into the light properties for that lamp, I'm upping the wattage for it. Let it be 300 watts for the time being. I'm sure we'll keep tweaking it, so it doesn't really matter at that point. I'm pressing dot and switching over to 3D cursor to use 3D cursor as a pivot point for rotating the light around. I find it oddly pleasurable to target light sources in this quirky way. I'm moving our key light off to the side and slightly behind so it lines up with the position of the windows, and I'm also making it way larger so it becomes softer. Remember the link between the harshness of light and its relative size, right? Don't worry though, it's something that we should be constantly reminding ourselves about, so we'll stop there for a minute shortly to talk about softness once more as a quick refresher. For now, let's note that to make our key light draw beautiful shadows and have a gradual light fall-off effect, we A. make this light a big one in proportion to the head, and B. keep it close. See the light fall-off from the first chapter. I'm sure you've also noticed that we have chosen a fairly common light placement, slightly above your subject and about 45 degrees from the camera off to one side, namely to the side that is opposite to our camera side, effectively giving some intensity to the shorter side of the face, so we film into shadows for a dynamic look. We'll talk more about this later. So, as a quick reminder, how does hard light differ from soft light? It is a pretty simple math, actually. The small light sources produce sharp shadows with virtually no transition from light to dark. It is important to remember that only the effective size of the source is what matters. A classic example is our sun, which is pretty big, but so far away that its relative size is effectively rather small compared to the subject, hence the razor-sharp shadows. The light sources with a relatively large surface produce softer light, extending the shadow gradient in an arguably more pleasing way, certainly in a more gradual way, better showing off the subject shape, while hard light could be better at capturing the crevices and other fine details. So sometimes it becomes a choice between drawing the primary shapes or prioritizing finer details. If you don't know what to do, make the light source big so it wraps around the object in a visually pleasing way. The only thing worth remembering though is that the softness of light depends on its effective size, or a total surface emitting light. Not distribution or the cone of light or any such stuff, but simply its surface in relationship to what it illuminates. So that's it. That was a quick refresher on softness of light. Now it's a great timing to get back to the light placement and talk about broad versus narrow lighting. The direction the light is coming from makes a big difference to how your objects will look, obviously. Among all possible key light placements, there's one variable that stands out as for the effect that it has on the shape and dimension, which is whether the light is placed on the camera side, like here, or whether it hits the object from the opposite side, which is the background side technically. Something like that. In other words, do we shoot the mostly lit side or mostly shadow side? Comparing these two lighting situations, which one does look more dynamic to you? It's not a hard-coded rule, but often the reverse key light position gives a nicer extended transition of light to dark, which shows off the roundedness of your model in a more interesting way, let's say. I'm a huge fan of nicer lighting gradient myself. It looks three-dimensional, very cinematic, I love it. To drive it home, here is a quick comparison. The example on the left shows the key light that is placed on the same side of the camera, effectively lighting the broader side of the robot face, pushing the shadows to the narrow side. On the right we have the opposite situation. We are effectively filming into shadows because our key light is placed on the opposite side of the camera, giving some intensity to the narrow side of the face. That is why the left situation is called the broad lighting and the right one the narrow lighting, or the reverse key lighting, or the upstage lighting. It has many different names, the same principle though. In my opinion, the upstage lighting is often a shortcut to creating a dynamic feel and showing off the dimension, so we can use it here as well. It will work, I guarantee it.